Okay, 9C, eyes and ears to me. I can see many of you already have your workbook open, just like normal, to our vocabulary bank page. And I can see some people have taken the initiative and already writing down our vocab for the day. Industry and tariff. If you haven't started, you've got 2 minutes from now. I'm going to need to see your pens moving. And our class volume, silent. Just like normal. Thank you. Okay, 9C. Thank you. Eyes and ears to me. Just waiting for a few at the back. Thank you. Okay. Keep these words at the back of your noggin. We're going to be using them later. First though, let's have a quick warm up as a class. Okay? I want you to imagine you're leaving school tomorrow. You need a job. These are 3 jobs you could get without having finished high school right now. Option number 1, working in Macca's. Lucian, I know you're already there. I know you're having a good time. We've got number 1, working as a cleaner. $50,000 a year. Great option. Option number 3, working at the Ford factory in Geelong. $75,000 per year. No high school qualification required. 9C, I want you to turn to your partner and talk to them about which option you would choose and why. We're going to come back in 3 minutes and I'm going to choose people at random who need to share what their partner said. Choosing what option and why. Turn and talk. Go. Okay, 9C, eyes and ears to me. Thank you. Alright, let's hear from a few people. Brayden, what did Henry choose? Chose option number 1, Macca's. And why? Awesome, free food. Fair enough. It's a good reason. Let's go over here. Suclay. What did Paul Wee say? You're not sure? That's all good. Maybe it wasn't clear before. So, you had to ask each other which option you choose and why. You choose Ford? Yeah, for more money, right? Well, that's a pretty good reason. Fair enough. Okay, raise your hands as a class if you chose option number 3, the Ford factory. Yeah, okay, that's most of the room. And class, you're not alone. For the last 80 years, this was a job that many Australians in our area turned to. It was a great option. But there's just one problem if you were hoping to do this today. The last Ford in Australia has already been made, and the factory is now closed. This lesson, we're going to learn why the factory closed and how it affected the people who worked there. We're going to do that by reading this comic by Sam Wallman. We are going to see how he uses specific language techniques and drawings to make a story about numbers and economics and policies seem human and interesting and relatable. To be successful in this lesson, you need to do 3 things. Read the comic. You then need to summarize some of the important information. I'm going to show you how to do that. We can start together. And in the final part of the lesson, we'll be analysing the language techniques of how we can make this information human and interesting. So, first cab off the rank, I want you to now turn your copy of the comic over and have a look at the back. You'll see some sentences which look like this. One thing that's missing is the answer. And we're going to now flip over the comic and have a look for it. So, I'm going to go to the beginning of the comic. I'm looking for these words. The final car. The final car. And I'm looking here at this first part. by the end of 2016, Australia will give birth to its final car. There it is, okay? 2016. Okay, cool. So I'm now going to flip back and put in 2016 in that sentence. I want you to repeat this process for the following sentences. You're looking for the numbers, the raw information in the comic, putting it in these sentences. Okay? You will have 10 minutes to do this. Our volume level should be whisper, talking to the person next to you maybe. Okay? Go.
My first example in my micro-teaching portfolio was a lesson opening using explicit instruction to introduce a reading activity. My key learning intention was for students to parse the text for information, analyse how this information was conveyed through language features, and how this influenced the text's interpretation. The chosen text was an extract from a webcomic called Winding Up the Windows by Sam Wallman. It was commissioned by SBS in 2016 to reflect on the end of the Australian auto industry. To support the needs, interests and participation of my learners, I would create a double-sided resource with an excerpt of the comic on one side and a closed passage literacy activity on the back. I chose this resource as it can be read by students with varying levels of fluency in reading, as it pairs colourful still images with small digestible chunks of text. By dual coding information through text and image simultaneously, students are able to make meaning through non-verbal and verbal processing, lowering the load on their working memory. And similarly, the closed literacy activity on the back amplifies this by acting as a visual organizer. This resource and the accompanying instructions are well placed to address literacy as a foundational skill by developing comprehension and fluency. I anchored this lesson within the English curriculum to the C2E9LY07 content descriptor within the literacy strand. This content descriptor seeks to develop comprehension strategies like summarizing, connecting, and visualizing, which, in my example, is seen in the close activity where students extract data from the text and summarize it visually. This chosen resource could also be taught to address cross-curricular priorities like numeracy, critical and creative thinking, and sustainability, and I had a crack at that in the second example in the portfolio. Overall, my verbal communication pedagogy was founded on ideas of explicit instruction, a teaching method characterized by Anita Archer as direct, unambiguous, with the goal of building students' understanding reinforced through long-term memory. I implemented Bill Rogers' communication strategy of chunk, funk, and dunk, where there were chunked distinct phases of the lesson, funked through by being relevant and interesting to students' lives, and dunked by encouraging high levels of initial success. To boost confidence, this emphasis on confidence through increasing fluency was chosen based on the needs of a classroom I imagined with 25 students with a wide range of fluency in reading and writing. I imagined that, according to ACARA's 2024 report on students with disabilities, I'd have 5 students with cognitive or socio-emotional disabilities, or both, such as ASD, dyslexia, or ADHD, who require educational adjustments. I understand that both of these groups, of the low readers and students with disabilities, are likely to have low levels of confidence when it comes to literacy and are at risk of withdrawing or disrupting as a result. So the lesson opening had 3 distinct chunked phases. The first, a vocabulary bank, do now routine. Vocab banks are a literacy strategy which seek to support an understanding of complex language by pre-teaching that complex language before students are exposed to it. This is based on an understanding of universal design for learning, where by providing a visual list of keywords beforehand, it ensures students have equal access to information, regardless of their prior knowledge. Furthermore, the act of writing early itself is regulating, particularly when designed as a do-now routine, because it's a habit which gives students an easy chance for success simply by getting to class on time, getting started. Finally, by reminding students that their volume should be silent, I used the verbal communication strategy of reiterating volume expectations to bolster those regulating qualities. Then, eyes on me's. 9B, eyes on me. I used a call to attention and pause to gain attention before flowing into a hook. I used a think, pair, share strategy, tailoring it to connect a student's interest by directly addressing a scenario which could be relevant for them. Students were instructed to choose a potential straight out of high school job and justify their choice to a partner. This activity aligns with the speaking and listening strand of the English curriculum by directing students to make selections and justify their decisions. I used a questioning method of a unison response when I said, raise your hands if you would have chosen Ford, to elicit responses with a high rate of participation. And by comparing Ford jobs to other unqualified jobs, this activity links to numeracy by asking students to use mathematics effectively in a wide range of social situations. I also used the verbal communication strategy of cold calling to promote accountability by asking students closed questions at random for students to demonstrate their listening. And when my fictional student hadn't listened, oh, poor wee, I mustn't have been clear. I assumed the best in her and gave them another chance for success in front of everyone. Then used unison response to draw students' attention to the dominant view in the room. And this is all intended to keep students engaged while moving the lesson forward through checks of understanding. I then used storytelling to connect to real experience before modelling the closed reading using Think Aloud to complete the first question and releasing responsibility for students to do the rest. Overall, this activity triggered a lot of reflection. While I tried to embody the idea of a low floor and high ceiling in terms of differentiation, I set the floor low, but I didn't really raise the roof enough to be interesting for some students. I also missed a golden opportunity for students to connect to their own lived experience. As one of my co-workers, all of her uncles worked at the Ford plant in Geelong. It's around the corner from the school we work at. Could have asked students about that. So I need more practice for implementing UDL principles to give choice and agency. I could give students different options for output, such as drawings or annotating the original text.
Hey, 9B coming in quietly. Thank you. So, as you can see, there's a do now on your table. It's a see, think, wonder activity, just like we did last week. So, I want you quietly to look at these pictures. I want you to write down one thing you can see. I want you to write down one thing you think about what you see. And then I want you to write a question. What does this thing make you wonder? Okay? You'll have 3 minutes for this activity. Our volume level is silent. Okay? Let's stay calm, regulated, and focused as we enter the classroom. Thank you. Okay, 9B, eyes and ears to me. Thank you. So, pens down, eyes to me. Thank you. So, as you might have guessed, we're continuing our work today about winding up the window, the end of the auto industry in Australia. The comic journalism we started reading last week, which explores how and why we stopped making cars here in Australia and who it affected. This lesson, we're going to be looking at a particular part of the comic. In this part, we're going to examine how Sam Wallman's language has made this story about statistics and economics and politics seem human and relatable and interesting to us. And specifically, we're going to zoom in even more and look at how he's positioned us as readers to be sympathetic with the workers. Now, last week, we saw how Sam Wallman used interviews with people who had worked there as a way to make the story seem more human. However, today, we're going to zoom out and see how he has created drama in one particular part of the comic. So, I need a volunteer to read out this part. Henry, thank you. Beautiful work, Henry. Thank you. Okay? The whole of Australia bears the mark of the industry and its creation. And when it says industry, we're talking about the car industry. Okay? What does this mean, to bear the mark? Well, Sam Wallman talks about 5 specific impacts of cars and the auto industry in very different areas. And there's one panel he zoomed out to give us an understanding of how interconnected these ideas are. So, climate change, We know that cars have contributed to climate change. We know that cars have contributed to the way we design cities. We know that the amount of cities we build has been influenced by cars. We know that indigenous dispossession was facilitated through the construction of roads and ultimately cars. And this is where it gets crazy. He talks about how human psychology has been influenced by cars and the ability to travel quickly through space. So, here is your mission, 9B. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to get your laptops out and you'll be doing a web research task. In a moment. Hold it. Let me explain everything before you get your laptops out. You can choose one of these 3 options. You will be writing 1 paragraph which answers the question on the right. How have cars made a mark on this area? This is what you'll need to be successful. In your paragraph, you need to have 3 ways that the auto industry has affected your area of inquiry. Whether it's climate change, urban planning, or human psychology. You need to have 200 words, and you need to have 3 reliable sources. Okay? Our volume level will be whisper for this task. This lesson plan is on Compass, so if you need to go back and revise it, it's accessible there. I'm going to bring the slide back here so that you can choose again. Remember, 200 words, 3 ways, 3 sources. We will have 20 minutes to work on this, and get your laptops out now.
The second example of my micro-teaching portfolio, also a lesson opening, but it guided students instead through a critical thinking warm-up into an ICT-based inquiry task. The key learning intention was for students to develop a broad understanding of different contexts surrounding our text, winding up the window. And this is accomplished through scaffolded inquiry into a specific metaphor that Sam Morman uses, where he says, the whole of Australia bears the mark of the auto industry. This language feature shapes the audience's reading of the text by establishing connections between seemingly disconnected histories and technologies. So, by allowing students to form their own beliefs independently through some research, I hope to draw their attention to how this language feature explicitly injects values and beliefs into the text by zooming out, creating a sense of scale and addressing cars as a historical force rather than a mere commodity. So overall, this strategy reflects a constructivist approach to pedagogy, where students activate their prior knowledge before the active creation of knowledge structures from personal experience connected to that prior understanding. Snowman and Beeler, 2000. This pedagogy would be best suited to a class of at standard or above students who already have some relevant background knowledge and are digitally literate. This is because constructivist pedagogies require existent knowledge to connect to, and the ICT component requires confidence using internet browsers and word processing software independently. I began the lesson with a silent do now activity for students to regulate as they enter the room. Routinated do nows are potent tools for creating what Bronzell and Norrish term rhythmic classrooms, as they allow students to anticipate meaningful learning from the second they enter the room. I imagine this class to be kind of halfway through term 1, a point where the routine has been explicitly taught, but the expectations need to be reinforced. Routines are a crucial non-verbal communication strategy as they aim to render engagement automatic and habitual, freeing up space in students' working memory for deeper thinking, such as a See, Think, Wonder activity, which was coined by Harvard's Project Zero. It features low-stakes writing, promoting the cross-curricular priority of critical and creative thinking. It asks students to use cognitive strategies like observing, connecting, and reflecting to generate new ideas and possibilities. This strategy had multiple intentions, introducing the lens of sustainability through the exhaust pipe image, while connecting to prior learning from previous lessons celebrating auto workers through art, like the Diego Rivera mural. This lowered the strain on students' working memory and sought to engage critical and creative thinking habits of mind in anticipation of their research to come. This was targeting the English curriculum outcome VC2E9LE030, analysing how language features can shape an audience's preference about the social, moral, or ethical positions presented in a literary text. I used ICT strategies, such as a PowerPoint with clearly highlighted text to allow students with auditory processing issues to follow instructions too. At 2 minutes and 25 seconds, I asked for a volunteer to read aloud using phase reading strategy. I then used a simple PowerPoint animation to highlight the key text on screen to draw the students' eyes to the key language feature we would be investigating, increasing their chance of success in front of the room. In acknowledging their courage and their effort, I'm trying to cultivate norms around participation and respectful listening. This is supported by Lemov's research on reading aloud as a tool for encouraging fluency in readers. And these norms are an important non-verbal communication strategy too, by subconsciously influencing learners' attitudes towards class. But the main task concerned a structured inquiry task, which gave students differentiated choice into the content they researched, while still having unambiguous expectations around their product. I planned structured guidelines into the inquiry task, and that's an important non-verbal strategy as it orients learners towards the subject-specific learning outcomes you want them to achieve, while still allowing for choice. These structured guidelines took the form of explicit success criteria and specific output requirements, such as their response being 300 words long, with 3 ways their topic had marked Australia. I also prompted students to use the language of substantiation by referencing their sources. This is augmented by the firm time limit I set for the task of 20 minutes. Helps students with ADHD who could suffer from time blindness. Short, sharp learning activities can give your students easy wins, helping them maintain focus. In terms of my own personal learning, I was struck watching this footage back by the need for an exemplar to clarify what I wanted students to produce. I also realised that I put less planning into this lesson than the previous, as I anticipated sharing the load of instruction with students through the research task. But I didn't plan any meaningful questioning or for contingency measures like a student not understanding the task. This diminished planning meant I spent too long actually explaining the example and the instructions, and that could lead to students losing attention too. So I understand that I need to always have exemplars as they provide students with an unambiguous idea of how to be successful. Thank you.